All right, let's talk about monthly payment tables. Now, this first question doesn't use a monthly payment table. It kind of uses the end of a problem here. In the next few questions, we will be using a monthly payment table, however. So here's Hazeline Allen. Her mortgage loan is $92,640. She financed her house for 30 years with monthly payments of $824. At the end of 30 years, what will be the total amount of interest charged? Well, her loan, like it said, was $92,640. What we need to do to find the total interest charged is first find the amount she pays total over the entire life of the loan. So that would be taking the monthly payment of $824 times the number of payments she's going to make. Well, how many payments is she going to make? It's for 30 years, so she's going to pay every single month for 30 years. So there's 12 months in a year. She'll pay 12 times a year for 30 years. So we just go ahead and take our 12 times 30. She's going to make 360 payments over the life of this loan, which is a lot, but remember it's taking her 30 years. Okay, so we want to know, again, the total amount she's going to pay for this loan. So we take the $824 she's paying each month times 360 months of payments. And we find out by the end of the loan, she pays $296,640. Okay, a lot of money. Okay, we want to know how much of that was interest. Okay, so to find the total amount of interest you pay, you take the total amount you paid, which we just found. In the end, she's going to be paying $296,640 total. Subtract from that the amount you were actually borrowing. She was only borrowing $92,640. So in the end, how much interest did she pay? To subtract that $92,640, the amount of her mortgage, we find out that of her payments, $204,000 were just finance charges. Okay, so she paid back her loan of $92,640 and she paid $204,000 in interest. Okay, here's a full question. Here we have Sean Fitzgerald. He finds a suitable property and agrees upon a selling price of $162,800. The mortgage company requires a 20% down payment, and he chooses to finance the loan for 30 years at 8% interest. What is the total amount of interest charged? Round to the nearest whole dollar. Okay, so first they say subtract the down payment from the selling price to find the amount you're financing, which is correct. A down payment you don't owe any interest on. That's cash you're paying up front. So first let's find out what would be the amount of the loan. Okay, well, if 20% is the down payment, what percent is left to be the loan? That would be, okay, out of 100%, if you pay 20% down, you're left with 80% to pay. Move the decimal 2 places to the left, we get 0.8. We're going to take 0.8. Again, what we're finding here is the amount of our loan. 0.8 times the cost of the home, which was $162,800. Okay. And we find out that the loan would be for $130,240. That's the amount of the loan. Okay, now we need to go through these steps here to find out, well, what did they want? They wanted to know the amount of interest. So we have to go through 3 steps. First, we have to find out, using the table, what the monthly payment would be. To do that, you take the amount of the mortgage and divide by 1,000. The reason for that is that the payment table that we have here is a monthly payment for each $1,000 of the loan. So we have to take the amount of the mortgage divided by 1,000. Okay, we're going to do this right here. So again, the mortgage was $130,240. That's the amount they were borrowing. Divide by 1,000, and then multiply by monthly payment for a $1,000 loan. That's our number from the table. So we go to the table. We need to know how many years and what interest rate he was paying. Okay, if we look here, it was a 30-year loan. So if we look at length of the loan here, here's 30 years are the values for 30 years. Okay, the next thing, what interest rate was he paying? Well, he was paying 8% interest. So we go down here, here's 8% interest. So these are the values for 8% interest, and we want the place where 30 years and 8% interest come together, which is right here at the number 7.34. Okay, so the monthly payment is going to be $130,240 divided by 1,000 and then times 7.34. All right, we get $955.96. Okay, so again, what did we just find? That's how much they're going to pay monthly payment. We need to keep going because we want to know how much interest they pay. So the next thing we have to find is, well, if they pay $955.96, what's the total amount they'll pay throughout the loan? Well, they're going to pay $955.96 times how many months? Again, this was a 30-year loan, so how many payments will you make? You'll make payments for 30 years, and there are 12 payments every year because there's a payment every month. So we take 30 times 12. Again, we have 360 payments. So he's making payments of $955.96, and he's making 360 of those payments. Okay, when we do that, we get $344,145.60. That's how much total he's going to pay over the life of the loan. Finally, we can find our interest charged. We take the amount he pays, $344,145.60, minus the amount he actually borrowed. So how much did he borrow? Remember, he had that 20% down payment, and the amount of his loan was actually $240,000. If we subtract those and find the difference, that will tell us how much of his money went to interest, or how much was a finance charge, which is a shockingly large amount of money, $213,905.60 of his payment went to interest. So that is the total interest that was charged on this loan, which is a huge amount of money. But if you ever do go into finance a home, especially if it's at 8%, they do have to tell you the final payout and how much will go to interest, and it is typically a very large amount of money. Okay, here's Rush Trainer. He purchased a houseboat for $128,000. The financing company required a 15% down payment for a 30-year loan at 6%. At the end of 30 years, what will be the total interest charged? So we have the same process again. First of all, we need to find out what's the amount of his loan. How much is he actually going to borrow? Well, he paid the amount of the house is $128,000, and he's paying 15% down. So what percent does that leave for the loan? Well, out of 100, if you pay 15% down, that leaves 85% for the loan. Move the decimal 2 places to the left, we get 0.85, and multiply by the price of the houseboat. Again, this is called the complement method of finding that. So again, the amount you're going to do on the loan is 85% of $128,000, which is $108,800. Now we can get started. We, in the end, want to know what amount of interest was charged, but we have to start at the top here first, find the monthly payment, then multiply the monthly payment by the number of payments made, and then find the interest charged by taking the total amount paid and subtracting the actual amount he borrowed. So again, start up at the top here. We're going to find our monthly payment, and I'm going to do it down here because it takes a little more room. So we're supposed to take the amount of the mortgage, so the amount he borrowed, $108,800, divide by 1,000. Again, that's because the number from the table is the amount per $1,000 of loan. We're supposed to multiply by the monthly payment for a $1,000 loan, which is our number from the table. We're looking for the amount for a 6% interest 30-year loan. So again, here is 30 years. These are the values for 30 years. At 6% interest, here's 6% interest. We want to know, where do those come together, the 30 years and 6% interest? Right here. So it's $6 for that amount. Okay, we go ahead and multiply that. $108,800, divide by 1,000, and then multiply by $6, and we get $652.80 is the amount of his monthly payment. We use that monthly payment to find the total amount he's going to pay on this loan. So we take the monthly payment of $652.80 times the number of payments. Again, this was a 30-year loan, so it's 30 years, and 12 times a year is 360 payments total. So we take our $650.80 times 360 payments, and we get $235,008. Whoops, $235,008 is the amount he's going to pay total. We can now use that to find out how much of that was interest. So we take that total amount he paid, $235,008, and subtract from that the amount he actually was borrowing, which, if we remember right here, that was his 85%, or his $108,800. Okay, when we calculate that, we get $126,208. That is the amount of his payments that will go to interest, or his finance charge.